Okay, so we're live. Bună ziua. We're gonna switch to English because of probably perhaps some English speaking attendees. Hi everyone, my name is Mihai. Great to have you all joining us for the virtual edition of the Cloud Conference. So just my job is to make the introduction, and then I'm going to invite our three speakers for today, which I'm going to introduce a bit later. For now, just a bit of an introduction though. So this was supposed to be a live event or an on-site event. For now, it's postponed, as you know, for September 30. But still, we do have the sponsors which were ready to support us for this edition. I want to thank them again for the industry partners: Aleph, Argo, Veeam, Computaris, Telecom, Palo Alto, Fortinet, 𝗕𝗂𝘀, 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗃, and also thanks to image partners and media partners. It's great to have them together with us. As I said, my name is Mihai Tătăran. I'm the general manager of Avaelgo. I'm a fan of the Microsoft Cloud. I personally have worked with Azure for 10 years, maybe even more now, from its very beginnings. Because of that, or maybe because of that, that's what we do in Avaelgo mostly. We're very specialized on the Microsoft technologies. In my spare time, I'm involved in organizing a conference for the IT community, which is called IT Camp. But that's not the purpose to introduce myself too much. Our company, which is the host of this event, Avaelgo, we're a Microsoft partner. We do a lot of projects around the Microsoft Cloud, be it Azure, be it Microsoft 365. So we've had a lot of such projects, maybe 30 even more in the recent years. A lot of migrating solutions to Azure, migrating entire organizations to Azure, be it Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Azure. And yes, we are the team behind Cloud Conference, but of course, as I mentioned before, it's a common activity with our partners. Some other initiatives that we've done in the recent past, for example, Azure Academy, teams create other industries or students get converted into junior cloud engineers. So that's the purpose of that project. So again, we're delighted to host this conference, and mainly it comes from our background on the Microsoft technologies. Now, going forward and discussing just a bit about the Cloud Conference, when we designed it a few years ago, we thought it would be a very interesting idea to have a conference focused on the Microsoft Cloud for the Romanian market and then even for the regional market, where people who actually do such projects come and speak based on their experience with their own knowledge, right? And that's what we do. Not only people from Avaelgo, but also from Veeam, from 𝗓𝗏, and all the other partners. They have a lot of experience doing such projects, having real world, expertise with very interesting scenarios. So this is not supposed to, and we don't intend the Cloud Conference to be a conference which is a marketing conference only, which would, we would talk only about how nice Azure is, or how blue Azure is, or how interesting Teams is, right? That's not the purpose. The purpose is to come and discuss based on our experience from real projects. Of course, the fourth edition is still planned for September 30, 2020. Hope we can see you there in person. In the meantime, we have decided to, keep each other in close contact, and that's why we have this virtual event, virtual conference. Even if it's smaller in size, it's much more reduced. There's still something. And I think what I want to emphasize as being relevant for this virtual event, for today's event, I like a lot this approximate quote. I think I've heard it multiple times, and I failed to quote the original author because I really don't know who that is, but I love it still, which says people tend to overestimate a new technology for the short term and underestimate it for the long term. And I think this quote can be very much applied for the cloud and AI technologies respectively, and even more today in today's world. Cloud, in my personal opinion, is already in the second part of that quote, of what that represents. So it's gone way past the initial overestimation of what the cloud can do. Now we're underestimating it. AI, for example, I think still falls in the first category, where we still tend to overestimate what problems and how easy it is to solve those problems using artificial intelligence. So in that context, and adding on top of that the context of the pandemic that we're going through right now, I think it's becoming even more obvious how underestimated the cloud was and maybe still is. Now we're seeing in the last weeks a lot of impact because of this pandemic on the cloud. So first of all, you see that companies who have been working online, who have had their resources in the cloud already, they don't suffer tremendous impact. Well, I mean, office jobs, of course, and collaboration jobs, versus companies who still have resources on their own premises, which have to deal with a lot of problems like VPN connectivity to those premises, bandwidth, and all of that stuff, which probably their IT was not prepared for, because now everybody's working from home, whereas in the past you had at any given time maybe 10% of those people working from home. So it's really a challenge for companies if they were not already in the cloud, and it shows even more how much cloud can bring us in terms of benefits. We've seen a surge in collaboration tools. I have some numbers here which are in the Microsoft space. So Teams has increased almost 800%. I've seen some data which is already a few days old with 44 million users concurrently. Windows Virtual Desktop, which is an Azure feature, by the way, it's a VDI solution from Microsoft, which is called Virtual Desktop, has increased 3 times in the last weeks. And there's a lot of data with other tools, other collaboration tools. But I think the point is that I think companies begin to realize even more how important it is to be independent from an office, from a premise, and to have as many of your resources and collaboration tools in the cloud. I think that's maybe the most appropriate context I can apply to our virtual edition today. And because we're almost ready, I want to just briefly introduce what we're gonna have as an agenda. So first, we will continue with my partner 𝗬𝗐. He's gonna talk about how we are helping companies achieve digital transformation based on some projects that we've done in the last years, both Azure and Microsoft 365 technologies. Then a short break. And then we have Alex from 𝗓𝗏 talking about BPM, Business Process Management, I think that stands for. And then another break, and then we have Cristian from Veeam, probably talking about backup and their other products and their solutions. And then we're gonna have a wrap up at 4:10. So we're on time, apparently. So I would kindly ask Tudor to prepare and share his own desktop. Thank you and enjoy our event.
All right, so this should now be up. Hi everyone. We'll be spending the next half hour or so talking a bit about the topic of digital transformation in the cloud. And I know it's a very short time for us to cover such a topic. It could end up taking days if we were to go into a lot more detail, but I just hope I can give you just the general idea of what we've seen so far and what we're seeing in the industry as well. My name is Tudor Damian. I'm the managing partner and CIO of Avaelgo. We, as Mihai mentioned, we've been doing a lot of these events and all sorts of initiatives over the years. Lately, our focus has been around the Microsoft Cloud and Microsoft technologies. So I will have some examples that are relevant to this and that come from the Microsoft technology stack, Azure, Office 365, and things like that. Before we start, though, I'd like to remind everyone that we have a Q&A section at the top right of your live stream screen. There's a Q&A section where you can either ask anonymously or you can tell us your name. Any questions that you ask, we can cover during the event, or even after one presentation is over, the presenter can take over and maybe answer some of those questions. The ones that are relevant for everyone else will make public. Others that are just, hey, I'm having issues with this or that, you can just let us know, and we'll try and address them as soon as we can. With that being said, let's go to the talk at hand. So my objectives for the next half hour is to try and cover some of the pitfalls of digital transformation. We'll be looking at some of the trends in the industry, the mistakes that some companies do, and some of the solutions. And we've seen a bunch of these ourselves in the projects that we've been involved in with our customers. I'll then be talking a bit about why you should be looking at the cloud as maybe part of your digital transformation strategy. If you've not looked at the cloud thus far, why is it relevant to maybe do it now? And once you get to the cloud, some of the recommendations, caveats, and things that you should be looking at, and I'll be focusing a bit more on the governance and security side of things there, and then we'll end up with some key takeaways and next steps. So looking at digital transformation, now this is a topic that's on everyone's lips nowadays. Everyone's doing it, but are they doing it right? And I would like to start with one of the laws in IT nowadays. You've probably heard of Moore's Law and other laws such as that. There's another law called Martek's Law, which is a bit more recent, but it's still very relevant for the discussion at hand. This law basically states that technology changes exponentially, yet companies only change logarithmically. So the rate of change for technology is so high that no company can actually keep up with it. And in time, there's a gap that keeps widening and eventually requires all organization to do sort of a reset, sort of a major change, a major shift. And this is what digital transformation is all about. How do you do that major shift that allows you to keep up with technology, with business, with your market changes, with everything that's being thrown at you in this fast-paced world? So for that, usually companies look at this, well, we transform, right? We adapt, we do what we have to do to stay in business. And how they see it is, well, we do digital transformation, we set up this project, we allocate a budget, we put someone in charge, which could, like the cartoon shows, which could be someone like, on an internship, right? Someone that really has no impact in the business, no real impact in the business. We just do it because we want to do it, because it's what everyone is doing anyway. The problem is most companies end up missing the middle part, the how you do it. And there's a nice quote unquote iceberg of digital transformation that I found that shows a lot of the things that are rarely visible in an organization. And there's a disconnect between the way companies say they get things done and the way those things really get done. So the public side of things, what you tell your customers, what you've got on the website, might not always be in line with what you're actually doing or how you're actually doing things, or how you're not doing things, but only saying that you are, or making it appear that you are. And the main focus is on how you do things, even nowadays, that will also impact how you do digital transformation. If you're saying, well, we're different, or if you're saying if it ain't broke, why fix it, or any of the approaches that once you're really facing a challenge, how you respond to it is what dictates how you will respond to a digital transformation initiative. If that's not in line with what you say you're doing, then that's going to be a problem. That's going to become a problem. And the market clearly shows that. If you're looking at the past, I think 3 years, and these numbers may vary, but not by a lot. It's usually 70-30. So for last year, it's a bit more. But the statistics show that over 70%, or around 70%, if you look at the past 3 years or so, of all digital transformation initiatives do not actually reach their goals. There's a yearly spending estimate of about $1.2, $1.3 trillion in digital transformation initiatives, and roughly $900 billion are just spent, and that's it. And companies realize, well, the digital transformation initiative didn't really succeed. We didn't really get to where we wanted or said we wanted to get to. And you end up realizing that you are going to need to spend a lot more, both time and money and resources, and probably fail at that as well. Now, in most cases, luckily, the first fail initiative leads to a successful digital transformation initiative further down the road, but that still doesn't mean that a lot of companies don't fail from the get-go. And one thing I'd like to point out here is that digital transformation doesn't really fail because of a shortage of tech. There's enough shiny new technology out there to help everyone. The problem is companies don't understand that most of these technologies only provide possibilities for efficiency gains. It's not a guarantee. It's not like you start using AI and machine learning and big data and all of that stuff and you're done. You're good. You've succeeded. It's how you end up using those things for you and how those technologies can help you, your business processes, your employees, your customers, and so on. So unless you figure out what your actual business needs and the problems you want to solve are, you will end up doing something just for the sake of doing it or just because everyone else is doing it. Also, if you don't have the right mindset to change and your current organizational practices are flawed, any digital transformation initiative, any attempt to change will just magnify those flaws. And I've got some examples here from the industry, and you can just search for a lot more of these, but I'm just going to point out 3 of them. For one, General Electric, at some point, I think it was 2011, they created a new digital business unit, but they were focused on the size instead of the quality, and they were still going on the quarter-to-quarter earnings reports and whatnot, and that's what drove that unit. It wasn't a long-term strategy or long-term innovation. It was always short-term goals. So that ended up costing them a lot of money. They put up a lot of money into it. A lot of people were involved in that, and they failed, and they kind of bounced back up from that, and later on they eventually succeeded, but the first attempt was a huge failure. Ford did something similar. They started a new digital service, but they thought it was a good idea to separate it from the rest of the company instead of integrating their digital solutions. So it's Ford Digital and Ford everything else. So that was another example. P&G, Procter & Gamble, they didn't consider neither the competition or the impending market crash from a few years ago. So they had a lot of challenges as well. And most of these missteps can really spell doom for digital transformation itself, but all 3 companies that I've mentioned here did manage to try again with better success at a later date. But their first attempt was a failure. Now, looking at some of the challenges that we could see here, One, when you go through a digital transformation initiative, you will see a change in the customer experience, and you should be able to, even right now, assess your current presence and find ways to improve the customer's enjoyment, of their experience of working with you. And that's becoming more and more important nowadays. The way the customer perceives their interaction with you and how easy it is and how satisfactory it is. Essentially, what this says is measure your customer satisfaction. But the way the customer perceives that is the way they perceive quality, and the way they will also, and the reason why they will or will not choose you in the future. So you need to take a look at that. Then there's employee pushback. There's a lot of things in a digital transformation initiative where you might end up telling your employees, hey, so from tomorrow we'll be using a new solution, a new software, a new CRM, a new ERP, a new whatever. And you might see pushback from your own people, and they might say, well, I know how to do things the old way, and I'm doing things better the way I did it up until yesterday, so I'm not going to be using that new shiny technology because nobody bothered to help me understand it or understand the need to change to that. The solution here is to build your customer service and your employee training and your company culture around your customers' needs. So we're doing this because the customers will be better off if we do this. And if you understand that, then it's going to be easier for you to change or to adapt. Omnichannel is also something that affects a lot of verticals in the industry. Customers just want to be able to interact with you on all channels. They want to send an email or write on social media or send in a complaint on like Facebook. They put it in a bad review on Google Maps or wherever. So there's a lot of channels that businesses open up and never really keep up with in the digital world. So you have a Facebook page, but you never respond to comments or messages there, or you rarely do. You only expect people to open up a support ticket in your help desk, for instance. Failing or poor analytics, that's kind of obvious. If you don't use your data right, you will end up taking the bad decisions that will end up with a failed digital transformation initiative. And things like AI and machine learning do help, but you need to be able to apply them to your actual business needs. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. But as long as you understand how that helps, it's going to be better for you. Then there's any lagging or legacy business models that you might still be using. You should still find ways to innovate and ditch your old systems, your old processes. There's another thing here. Usually companies, not a lot of them, but some of them just do digital transformation for the sake of doing it, or for the simple reason that everyone else is doing it. So they end up in this starting blind position. Let's just get things started and we'll figure things along the way. I don't know what we're getting ourselves into, but we need to do this. So let's just do it. Don't do that. Try and figure out where you stand on your transformation journey right now, and what do you still need to do or assess, change before actually starting your digital transformation. Another mistake that we've seen is companies just looking at a short-term view, like doing planning for migrating to the cloud for just the next 3 to 6 months, for instance. They don't realize that this is a long-term thing. This is something that you might be looking at for like 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. And just doing that could lead to another potential issue, which is project fatigue. How are you going to still keep everyone engaged and involved a year from now or 2 years from now on the same digital transformation project? And that goes hand in hand with the culture change and aligning the business and the IT and technology. because if you look at people understanding the need for this and people seeing how technology can help them, also means that you need to figure out how technology helps your business and what you need to do for that technology to actually help your business. So things like retraining your people to use that new technology. And then there's, of course, the data challenge, where mostly infrastructure, information management, and governance are key, and we'll see that later on. So what can you do? Well, we've seen a lot of industries and verticals that have transformed immensely. The way we buy, consume things like books, music, banking, education, transportation. You've got Kindle and Uber and Revolut and things like that that have popped up over the past few years that are changing those industries. And they've transformed those industries right in front of our eyes. And it's mostly about data. It's mostly about looking at how things go and responding to that. So look at accessing resources as something that's way more important than just owning or creating resources. This is a huge change. Or sharing content and resources is much more effective than just accumulating that content or those resources. Decentralizing, distributing is more powerful than just stockpiling originals, and connectivity and flow of data is the starting point for any innovation, for any socializing. Then there's the people, and here's where you should start with engaging them. Put your people at the center of your digital transformation, whether it's employees or partners or customers. It really depends on what you want to change. You need to look at who you're doing it for and actually do it for them. And once you understand who your business serves, you'll be able to easily transform those things, or easier. It will be easier. And then you can look at evolving processes. Don't just rush to try new tech without considering the broader strategy and how those tools that you just pile up will impact you and will impact your costs in the long run if they're not aligned with your business needs. Now, why would you choose the cloud as part of this strategy? Well, the thing is, if you're not doing it, you're probably, and if you're not even considering assessing the cloud, you're probably already way behind. If we're just looking at some of the trends in the industry, just recently, both Gartner and IDC confirmed that compound annual growth rate of around 28% or nearly 30% for infrastructure as a service, that's still growing, and that should be 2025. Let me just quickly there we go. So you're looking at a thing that's growing and will keep growing for the foreseeable future, and a lot of CIOs will be pressured by their businesses to eventually migrate their data centers to infrastructure as a service, to the cloud. And if you're just looking at platform as a service, the time required to manage apps is cut down by up to 80%, and the time to deploy is cut up by up to 50%. But the most important thing here is, if you just look at the top cloud initiatives right now, they don't have anything to do with, hey, let's think about moving to the cloud, or let's do the first migration to the cloud. It's more often optimizing existing cloud use. So we're already in the cloud. Let's look at cost savings, or how do we move more stuff to the cloud? So this is what companies, and this is a study, a report from last year. So if you're not considering this, you're already behind the curve, so to speak. So why would you choose the cloud? For one, it's about cost control. Any utility service ends up costing less, even though on the surface they might appear that they cost more. And think of like your water bill or your electricity bill. You only pay for what you use. If you can build your processes around that, you can end up with a lot of cost savings, or just better cost control. Efficiency, scalability is, of course, something that's inherent to the cloud. If you use it right, you can address some odd workloads patterns, the on and off workload that you just need a piece of software to run 1 or 2 days a month, and then you can turn it off and not pay for it for the rest of the month and just reuse those resources or those funds for something else. Innovation is key. There's some cloud native solutions. Some of the things like AI, machine learning, analytics, big data, storage, and things like that. Some of these things, some of these technologies are only possible in the cloud. Others might be possible in a hybrid world or an on-prem world, but most of them are cloud native, and they will only work in the cloud. So you'll end up expanding your infrastructure and your solutions to the cloud. Starting up, if you're just a new company, a startup, the easiest and most obvious choice is to go to the cloud and just not bother with keeping anything on-prem. And that's valid for a lot of startups nowadays. And then there's security and compliance. Things like GDPR, data protection, data classification, they're easier to do in the cloud or by just using cloud technologies. Now there's also a bunch of challenges that come with that, and you need to be able to address that. There's challenges around identity and data, the way you do classification and labeling, the way you do monitoring and response. There's issues around geography and latency and where is my data stored, and what happens if I've got offices on multiple continents, say. Then there's the financials, and you need to understand the financial models of any cloud provider that you end up using, and you need to understand what stays constant and what varies in your own cloud consumption and adapt to that. And you need to have the proper tools and the proper alerts and controls in place for that. Governance is where a lot of companies fail when they move to the cloud, and if you fail here, you will end up impacting your costs, you'll end up impacting your effort, you'll end up impacting a lot of other things. So governance is where things are at, if you want. Looking at locks and grouping and tagging and things like that, that's essential when you end up in the cloud. And then looking at the way to change your own processes is also something that is really, really important when you look at the cloud. Now, just as an example, and we've also built our own internal processes and our services partly around this, but just as an example, Microsoft has their own cloud adoption framework when they talk about looking at the cloud or moving to the cloud. And this is just the big picture of how it's done. You start by defining a strategy, understanding your motivations, you're looking at your business outcomes and justification, and then you do the planning and the readiness phase. You find your first landing zone and things like that. And then you do the actual migration or the innovation that you need. And all throughout this process that can end up being a long-term recurring thing, you look at things like governance and management. So there's a lot of things to consider, and they might not always be as obvious. Then there's the changing part of responsibility. And when you get to the cloud, you're thinking, well, now the cloud provider owns all of that. And that's not always true. What completely transfers to the cloud provider is just the physical side of things, the host, the network, the data center. In many other situations, whether you're looking at infrastructure, platform, or software as a service, the responsibility is either shared or it's still with you. It's still retained by you as the customer. And this is not depending on a particular cloud provider. This is valid for any cloud provider. And you can see a bunch of these responsibility zones or areas listed here. So you need to be aware that you still need to work on things even though you move to the cloud. It's not like I've moved everything to the cloud, so I'm done. And this brings us to the very short security and compliance talk when it comes to the cloud. And this starts with GRC. GRC, or governance, risk management, and compliance. These are the three facets that help companies ensure that it meets its objectives. And the goals of GRC are to keep risk at acceptable levels, to maintain availability, to comply with any laws and regulations, and to protect both your customer and your internal data. And doing it in the cloud is a challenge in itself. So you can look at things that are in focus here, things like regulatory compliance or data governance or financial governance, change management, facing any business and market changes and challenges, and looking at frameworks that can help, like 𝗕𝗂𝘀 and 𝗕𝗂𝘀, and how they apply to the cloud in your strategy, in your operation, in the definition of clear ownership and responsibilities and things like that. So just looking at governance and security as a subtopic of moving to the cloud is a whole thing in itself. Now, understanding some of these security controls and how they apply to whether you're still responsible or not, there's a bunch of them that still apply when you're in infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. And you can look at some of the things on this slide. The recording will be available, so you'll be able to look at these things in more detail later on. But just looking at I don't know, security strategy and governance, and the way you do administrative control, or the way you protect your data, that's valid across all areas. You're still very much in charge of it, regardless of whether it's on-prem or you're using software as a service. It's still your data, and the way you protect it, it's still on you. There's another thing here, which is third-party risk, or actually even fourth-party risk. The customers are usually responsible for implementing security in their cloud applications. The software as a service providers, they're responsible for the security in the cloud, and the providers are responsible for the security of the cloud. And you can look at those providers, and they have their own third parties that help manage or just help with the customer support and things like that. So you will have some technician on the other side of the planet that's a third party accessing your data when you open up a support ticket. They won't be able to access it outside of that, but you still need to consider all of that, and you still need to consider how can you better secure your own data when you put it in the cloud. Also looking at analyzing costs and operational consistency and things like that is part of the challenges that cloud security and compliance bring. So building such a strategy is mainly about understanding what your business challenge is, look at protecting your data regardless of where it is, and that will help you protect it across platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. It doesn't matter. Look at a data-centric threat defense. You can look at any proactive risk management solutions that you can apply, and do it continuously. And once you understand that challenge, you need to be able to resolve that challenge. So you secure the data, you don't secure the cloud. That's important for you to understand. You need to manage that risk proactively, including doing maybe an initial assessment and see how you're managing risk right now, and implement any foundational security or with compliance as a byproduct. So just think security by design, security by default, if you want. Now, keep in mind, this can get very complex, and I won't stay much on this slide, but just as a reference, this is the Microsoft Cybersecurity Reference Architecture. These are most of the solutions, the security solutions in the Microsoft technology stack that apply to both on-prem, cloud, hybrid, so things like how do you manage your Windows and network and emails and data in Office 365 and identity and stuff in Azure. I highly recommend that you take a look at this cybersecurity reference architecture just to understand. And this is, again, this is just for the Microsoft technology stack. If you go outside of this, things get even more complex, but just understanding this and applying this correctly is a challenge in itself. So how do we do it in Avaelgo? Like I mentioned, we do have a process that we've refined over the years, and by working with our customers, we've ended up with what we now call Avaelgo 365. It's an end-to-end process that helps with digital transformation, with migration, with adopting the cloud, and it's tailored for, it's designed for the Microsoft technology stack, for Azure, for Office 365, for Microsoft 365. And it involves helping the customer better define their cloud strategy and migrating stuff to the cloud in the first phase, and then an ongoing phase, which is all about optimization and proactive stuff, all about fixing anything that's broken, and trying to find new ways for innovating and for growing and for just doing things better by using technologies that are already there and you might not be using efficiently. And all throughout this process, you've got ongoing advisory and training for your people and your staff and things like that. So we've ended up with this after doing a lot of these cloud projects and digital transformation initiatives. So wrapping up, we've very briefly discussed some of the challenges and pitfalls of what digital transformation entails, some best practices from the companies that actually made it, quote unquote. We've tried to look at some of the reasons for just taking the cloud into consideration in your digital transformation strategy, how to approach a cloud strategy initiative, and how to look at GRC, or governance, risk management and compliance in the cloud. Now, as some first steps or takeaways moving out of this session, don't just do digital transformation for the sake of doing it. Do it because you've identified a real business need that can be addressed, and try and make sure that the technology follows through, the people follow through, the processes follow through with that. You're trying to fix a business need, to address a business need, to improve something in your business, and it's not the other way around. It's not, I use this technology and my business will get better. It's, what do I need for my business to get better this way? And the answer is this technology or this process or this change. Make sure you have a clear cloud strategy, including security and governance. Discover what you've got right now and where you're starting from. And don't forget, in most cases, you're just extending your practices to the cloud. The company won't change radically overnight. It's going to be the same people using mostly the same tools with some minor changes and doing things mostly in the same way that they've done them yesterday. So as long as you understand that, you need to, you can better address the digital transformation part. And yes, you do need to consider all the details when doing this. And if you don't, you might end up in a lot of trouble. Now, until the next presentation starts, which is going to be in like 8 minutes or so, we are open for Q&A, so you can send in any questions using the Q&A option at the top right, and I will be around to answer questions. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us in this live event from your couch. I am also live from my couch, as you can see. So let's all get comfortable and above all remain positive, because better times will surely come. As you all know, recent worldwide events proved us more than ever that flexibility, adaptability, collaboration, and cloud are the keys to prevent the disruption of the activity of a company. And I will give you just a few examples from these days. To help the National Health Service and healthcare system on the move, Uber is committing 200,000 free rides to and from work for healthcare workers, and more than 100,000 free meals through Uber Eats, all delivered to their home or even the world. A lot of companies these days worldwide have turned their attention to 3D printing to boost the production of the necessary equipment like masks and valves that are so scarce due to the high demand generated by the pandemic. And companies around the world, even in Romania, have adapted their production and business flows to not just survive, but become a part of the solution. And all of these examples show flexibility. I would do a parallel between these examples and the business software world. And I would say that in order to have flexibility, you need to be able to rapidly build any business flow as an application, as simple or as complex, and be able to access that application anytime, anywhere, even in work from home scenarios like this one. Also, the retail world has seen a great shift to online in this period. This other example from Romania shows a great level of adaptability. I have received this email from 𝗕𝗵𝗴𝗶𝗴𝗀. They are a pizza shop in Romania, and they have adapted their delivery flow to the new situation in order to gain their customers' confidence and keep the online orders going. And on top, they have also started to produce bread as a new product line. In the business software world, if I would continue the parallel, in order to be able to adapt quickly, I think that you need to be able to rapidly build applications, so to be able to have rapid application development to adapt to changes. You can't afford anymore to lose precious time and resources to invest in huge developments. You need to have rapid time to market. You need to build rapidly a page, a web page, to go live, and maybe then add on top of it other functionalities. So you need to be agile. And of course, you also need, in this agile type of development, you need to avoid building islands of information. So every small app that you do needs to be interconnected and also connected with the other business tools from the company. From the collaboration point of view, everybody is, of course, now online in Teams or other online collaboration tools. My two boys are right now in their rooms doing their homework with their teachers, and I think that's top of collaboration from my point of view. Google Arts and Culture teamed up with over 200,000 museums and galleries around the world to bring everyone virtual tours and online exhibits of some of the most famous museums around the world. And music bands have started live online concerts on YouTube to stay in touch and even grow their fan base. Even the most influential YouTuber in Romania, which is called 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝗆𝗍, is now hosting a live show every night, constantly gaining from the classic television market share. In our perspective, from the collaboration point of view, every business application is actually a flow. You need to be able to stay connected with your teams and collaborate directly on business flows. Attach documents to those flows, add comments. Actually, you need to avoid using papers. You need to go paperless in order to be able to, I don't know, approve an invoice, for example, or approve a purchase request or an expense request, or even to sign a contract. And of course, we are seeing an increased demand for online services. Amazon is hiring aggressively to meet customer demand. Traffic has soared on Facebook and YouTube, and cloud computing has become essential to home workers. Amazon said they're hiring 100,000 warehouse workers to meet the surging demand. And traffic for video calling and messaging has exploded. Microsoft Teams users for online collaboration had climbed nearly 40% in a week. Netflix and YouTube are gaining audience as movie theaters are closing down. Companies were already dumping their own data centers to rent computing from Microsoft or from other vendors. And that shift is likely to speed up as millions of employees are forced to work from home as we are. And in Germany, a hackathon was done with over 42,000 participants, and they delivered more than 800 projects. And in the same time, NVIDIA called their PC gamers to contribute to the fight against the pandemic, using their idle processing power in a disrupted computing project to speed up the computations. So from the cloud perspective, it's now more than ever visible that the fact that scalability is key. In extreme scenarios, you can scale the infrastructure up to meet increasing demands, or scale it down to drastically reduce costs. So how do we see this, and how does this impact the business application? Actually, how we are addressing this is through low coding platforms. So what are low coding platforms? Well, actually, today you can go and buy a business solution off the shelf. It's a functionality rich solution, but it's inflexible. In the same time, you could go at the other extreme to custom development. So you could customly develop your own application. It's completely flexible, but slow. And in the middle, there's low-code platforms, low-code development, which gives, from our point of view, the right balance between speed and flexibility. Actually, what you can do is build applications, web applications, which are responsive, so you can use them on any device from anywhere without writing code. you need to define the workflow, you need to define the business rules, the interfaces, to connect it with other business solutions from the company, and then you're live, up to speed in 1 week or 1 month, depending on the flow and the application that you need to build. And we are doing this with our own BPM solution, 𝗓𝗄𝗶𝗴𝗃. It's a business process management solution, but actually BPM, we thought of other acronyms to use it for, and we are using it also for business solutions, platform, and modeling. And I will show you a few examples of how we address these 3 acronyms with our BPM platform. So from the business solutions perspective, you can actually we can build any flow, any application, and package it as a solution. I will start with a few simple examples and then grow to more complicated ones. So let's get the example of a simple invoice approval. So for example, you're a company, and now a lot of companies are seeing increasing demand for working with documents while they're online or at home. So you need to have, for example, invoices, you scan them, you do an automatic recognition of the information from the invoice, then you have an approval flow. You maybe have mobile approval for those stranded at home. And then you have integration with the ERP solution to push the data there after it's approved, and then of course reporting. So an application built with the BPM platform, the 𝗓𝗄𝗶𝗴𝗃 platform for invoice approval would maybe look like this. So you would be able to access it from any browser, and then from any mobile device you would be able to open and to see the invoice and to approve it. And I will just show you a quick demo of how this would look like. So you would actually go and add a new invoice, attach the invoice. Let's say it's a simple invoice. And then you would have to complete the data, to fill in the data from the invoice in your system, in the application built with the BPM platform. For example, you would fill the supplier and then the invoice number and so on. But this could be difficult if you would have a lot of invoices. So we have built a mechanism for training an AI model. We are using Microsoft's AI and of course the power of Microsoft Cloud. And you could train a model like this. So you would attach the invoice, and then you would train the model to explain the AI behind where are the information that you need from this invoice. For example, the invoice number, the invoice date, the total, the VAT number, and so on. And you would just need to do this for 2 invoices. And then from the 3rd invoice, the AI would automatically recognize the information and would fill in the data, just how you will see immediately in the next example. So I just trained the model, and now I'm just using it to automatically get the data from the invoice and then send it to the approvals. For example, I'm adding here an approver. Of course, this approval flow can be predefined based on the value of the invoice and so on. But this is just a simple example for you to understand how this would look like. And I'm sending it for approval. Now I can see it. Of course, I can also see it from my mobile, as I said. If I would jump into a mobile view, this is how the user that approves would see it. And then I would see the whole history, who has approved it, in what state it is, and the attached documents, and so on. So this is a quick example for this type of flow. Of course, this can apply to any flows in a company, any flows like this. For example, another simple example, it's expense approval. So maybe when I need to do some expenses, I need to take some money before, and I am creating this expense approval where I will have the approvals lists. I will have attached documents. I would be able to also print the expense approval to go to accounting and to take the money out. And all of these flows, you could also, let's say, bundle them in an application. For example, this could be bundled in an application for finance and administration, where you have the invoice recognition, you have the approvals, the timesheets, integration with ERP, and so on. But we could move a lot further and let's say go to procurement, and there we can do purchase request, purchase order, approvals, e-auctioning, expense versus budget, and so on. So you could manage the entire internal procurement process of the company through a single application, which is rapidly built, easy to use, and easy to train to train the users to use it. And this is how it would look like. I would have, for example, a purchase request, and I will add the articles, the items that I want to buy, and then I will have an approvals list and so on. But then you could also go to industry solutions. So we could build, you could build, or we could build together industry solutions, and we have started to build such industry solutions. And for example, this can apply to any industry like energy, health, banking, services, insurance, government, you name it, manufacturing, and so on. And I will give you just some quick examples. So for example, in healthcare, we started building a tailor-made application for hospitals, clinics, and assisted living facilities, which is optimized for mobile, of course, and not only. And you would have all your appointment system, medical records, treatment plans, and so on. In the construction business, we have started building the solution for managing the entire activity of construction sites with resources management, consumption reports, list of materials, purchase orders, and so on. In banking, you can have the full solution for automated loan processes, client requests, loan portfolio monitoring, and you can have the full flow of online approvals, especially these times. So, for example, a credit application or any type of request from the customer can be built to follow such a flow, and this is how it would look like. And other examples like legal, for example, we have built an entire solution for the legal industry, for lawyers, where they have all their data in one place, all their billing process, the timesheets, the integrations with the justice portal, and so on. So these are just a few quick examples for you to understand the broad, let's say, categories of the broad categories of applications and business flows that can be built with this platform. On top of that, you can use it by yourself. For example, if you have internal resources, to build your own flows without the need of an external provider like us, for example. You can just take it as a platform and install it and just start building flows. And that's kind of easy because it's a solution built for business users and not just for developers. So you would have a workflow visual designer, business rules engine, you would have all the data models, integration plugins, and with the help of the visual tools, you could effortlessly transform any flow into an application. So everything starts with a flow, and then it's transformed into an application. And of course, then the integrations with a lot of solutions like ERP, CRM, document management, in order to have all the data, let's say, where it needs to reside, because the solution can also work as a middleware between all of these solutions. So let me just jump into a quick demo of the platform this time. It's a little more technical, but I'm sure you will understand. So this is how the platform looks like. So this is where we build the flows. It's a web application which is built with AngularJS as a web application. So, for example, this is the example with advanced requests and expense requests, and this is the flow for advanced requests. And the flow is built by stages and activities. These are the stages: draft, sent for approval, approved, validated, paid, and so on. And this is the activity: edit, advance. Actually, this is where you can build your interface, the view that the user will open and will fill in the data in. So this is the view. The view is built in Romanian, but you can also add several languages, and I will show you how the view looks like. So it's actually an HTML editor. It's a what you see is what you get editor, where you can add items like toolboxes, checkboxes, radio buttons, text fields, and so on. Actually, behind you have HTML, so you can also view the source if you want, and you can build any type of interface you want. There's no limitation. Then, for example, this button, send for approval, it's in Romanian. This button, for example, if I want to see the properties of this button, I will just click right click and then see the properties. For example, this is a navigation control. I could also, for example, if it was a field, I could have a parameter here, which would fill the field with data. This is a button, so I have a confirmation. Are you sure you want to send this for approval? And then I have, for example, availability. So do I want this button on the form or not? So I have availability, yes, no, or dynamic. And if it's dynamic, then I will add a business rule, and the business rule will tell me if the button shows or not on the form. So this is how I give life actually to the application. So for example, this button has a business rule here. So if this business rule is true, so if the status of the flow is draft, so only in the draft status of the flow, this button will appear. Okay, so only when the status is draft, only then I can send for approval. This is the rules editor, and I have all of these operators, which I can use to build rules. And actually, this is it. You don't need to write code. You just need to add rules like in Excel. So it's a functional language. So if you know how to write advanced, let's say, Excel functions, you can also write rules in our rules editor. And this is it actually. And then of course you have the plugins, the integrations with other solutions. And let me just give you just a few examples. Of course, we can build any type of integration, but these ones are already pre-built. For example, you can send an email and you just need to create a plugin call. And then you would fill in all the information like from, to, CC, BCC, and so on. And you can fill them in several ways. For example, you can attach a constant, so I can just add my email address, or I can attach a rule. So a rule will decide which email address is filled in, or a parameter. Or, for example, I could attach a plugin to go and fetch the email address from the CRM systems or from the ERP system, for example. And of course, other integrations like, for example, Active Directory, file formats, SQL Server, for example, if you just need to integrate with, a legacy application which has which doesn't have web methods, or just integrate with web methods, or integrate directly with an ERP solution. For example, you have already pre-built integrations with NAV, AX, CRM, and you can just create, for example, an entity in the ERP solution. So you have, you want to create an account, for example, in the ERP or in the CRM, you just call this plugin and it will create the account. And then you have templates. So for example, if you want to print out something, you just have document templates here, and you can print the expense document, for example, after your expense is approved, and just go with it to accounting to take the money and do your job. And this is how, with these building blocks, we actually built the applications. This, of course, there's documentation behind, so you can use it together with our support to build your own application. But trust me, it is easy. I've also done it, so it's easy to do. Good. So this would be a short introduction of how we and you can use the platform to build your own solutions, applications, web applications. And third of all, third part is the modeling. So we can also build custom-made applications. So instead of doing custom development, we can build custom applications. But the first step for that is to analyze very well what you actually need. And that's why we have a department that does business process reengineering. So we can do all the business process reengineering for a company to review and update the as-is model, and then to design the to-be model, especially now when companies are changing very fast, and then test and implement the to-be model with the help of the BPM platform. And we can be very agile because we can, let's say, have live an application in 1 week or 1 month if it's more complex, and then add on top of it. So that's how you remain agile these days, and you don't have to wait, let's say, 6 months or 12 months for a huge application to be developed or to be implemented. If it's an off-the-shelf application, you can just go agile and implement a flow that you actually need now. For example, sign contracts online because you are stranded at home and you need to have those documents and go paperless as soon as possible, and then add on top of that as soon as you can. So what we are actually doing is shifting from custom development to low-code development. This is the approach, and we already have a lot of customers. These are just a few examples from customers that are already implementing the solution or are using the solution as a platform to build their own apps. And of course, to be able to give access to a broader perspective of customers, we are now opening up to partnering with other companies in order to make available our platform for a broader perspective of customers. So that's why we are announcing the fact that we are now starting to search for partners, resellers, and technological partners. So as a reseller, our goal is to, of course, enhance our partners' existing portfolio with our solution, so they can be able to sell that to their customers, also our solution. Also for technological partners that also have internal capabilities of development, they can also implement the solution to their customers, the Argo BPM solution. So yeah, just join our program and contact us if you're a partner that wants to become a reseller or a technological partner, and also if you are a customer in the search of such a solution. Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello to all, and thank you for speaking with us. I think it's quite difficult nowadays to just sit around and listen to presentations, but we're trying to bring some new content to you. So during these periods of time, maybe you learn something new, maybe you look into something new, something that could help, something that just might interest you in general. But the main concept is that we're talking about features that allow you to use the cloud from the beginning as a new whatever fits best for your portfolio. So straightforward, getting into the topics. Nowadays, the data is what actually leverages everything, right? So they name it the new oil in the business because, especially as we see now, everything relies around the data, right? What do you do with the data? How you actually consume it, how you process it, and actually how you save it. So our topic today will be about backup, about what are the options to protect, what are the options to put back to the cloud, and basically provide better security for data, be that on-prem or in the cloud or wherever that is. As I mentioned, yes, that data is changing everything. So nowadays it can be in the cloud, it can be straightforward generated by our mobile devices or any kind of edge or IoT device, or for bigger companies, even AI, why not? But the principle is that something to happen to your data nowadays, it's very costly. Yeah. So data is growing, data is getting more complex, and every day, as we discussed already during these sessions, we're facing general issues with this growth, and data is getting out of our hands. So we are working on how to better sort these kind of problems. And if you're looking into a backup solution, some of the solutions out there, let's say that just don't stand out in the options of what they have as to cloud options of to protect the data or flexibility that requires nowadays to actually process somehow your data and keep it as safe as possible. So our vision in Veeam is actually to become #1 cloud data management, and to offer this option not to just simply backup or replicate the data to the clouds or actually just restore it straightforward, but mitigate it, use it, leverage it in any ways possible without impacting your production environment again and again. So before going into the topics, just a few words about the company. We started the company 12 years ago in headquarters of Switzerland, and just 10 years out on the market to sell the product, we're already covering 76% of the global 2000 and Fortune 500, and we reach already 1 billion in revenue over one fiscal year. So numbers are standing out quite well, and if you look at the NPS scores especially, Veeam is one of the highest in the industry. Actually, what you see here in the chart is a general satisfaction level, the Net Promoter Score. If you look into just backup industry, we're about 3 times the average that these companies receive. How do we do this? It's basically protecting, first and foremost, virtual workloads. We built a platform for virtualization from the beginning, and we kept developing this product out the years to offer more than just doing the backup, to be able to offer availability of the data and then services, and certainly move on towards cloud data management and leadership positions. As products, we have a large variety of different solutions, but overall they cover backup and replication, they cover orchestration, they cover monitoring. They actually deliver these kind of ways in very proven methods, and they'll allow you to manage your data and leverage it without doing any kind of vendor lock. So we are a software company only. We do not sell any kind of hardware. We do have some special integrations with one of our or many of our partner alliances, such as Microsoft. But the main idea is that once you look into a product, usually the scarce part is to get somehow vendor locked and not being able to get out of it. And even though maybe your business would be better out elsewhere, you will not have the capability of moving your data or your protection of it somewhere else. As mentioned, yeah, we'll do a lot of things, and we'll talk about these during the session. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, being like just the introduction webinar for the upcoming live session. And we'll try to just quickly go through the product portfolio, just to give you a glimpse of what Veeam is, and then talk about the specific integrations with Microsoft that we can offer. How we usually deliver this content, and especially how the product is itself. It's simple, it's flexible, and reliable. So we're not going into the details as of now of what these mean. Would just like to highlight of how did we get there. Right? I mentioned that we're 10 years on the market and selling, and this actually required some steps, some new technologies to invent, patented technologies of Veeam to offer more. And over the time, we evolved together with cloud, with virtualization, and even with the public offerings of vendors such as Microsoft, AWS, or someone else. Now, the product will be simple as mentioned, but the structure of it can be very vast and very easy to actually implement. Being in consideration for this very large one-pager, as we call it, to consider that from here, it's just Veeam backup replication is one software that you install, be it on a physical or virtual server, and you're immediately being able to just add your hypervisor, such as Hyper-V, and be able to straightforward create backups, create replication for them, do the restores from them out of the box. It's what the business needs actually in this current era, right? So you add virtualization to the backup software. You select some, of course, details like backup repositories and so on, but you're ready to create backups, and our backups will include by default all the restore options that one would need. So shortly going through the functionalities, I'd rather focus on the cloud part. So just as an introduction to Veeam, with one single backup, you'll have all of these options to restore. What do they mean? For example, full VM restore is quite clear, right? You extract the data, you put it back to your production environments when the case, and then simply just power on those backups. Well, that's kind of classic, right? What we have special right from the beginning is instant recovery. It's the capability of just powering on the virtual machine backups that are compressed and deduplicated in your repositories straightforward from there, just like as a mount point, run the services on top of the virtual machines, of course, and then restore the data in the background. So actually you can come back with your services online in a matter of minutes. So including this technology, basically you don't even need sometimes replication, right? Because if you need something, you can power it on from the backup. You can move along with the restore while the software is up and running already. And this will just bring your service back online for sure in a matter of a few minutes. And with the same technology, imagine just simply setting up some rules and having automated options of testing these backups, because it's one thing to actually be able to just power on the backups. It's another complete thing to actually work, right? And usually if you do the testing, this takes time. It needs a separate environment or special conditions, manual restores, and a lot of labor of documenting what you did. Veeam is simply capable to use the instant recovery technology to power on your backup copies and run them in an isolated network, run some tests against them specific by Veeam or edit scripts that have been developed internally, send you a report and let you know how your backups are actually doing as from a run perspective. So imagine having any kind of issues. Maybe you apply some patches, you didn't even restart now. So production is fine, but maybe your backups are already corrupted. You'll be aware of these problems proactively, and you'll be able to use the same type of technology to run Veeam sandboxes to simply just be able to use a similar approach of running into an isolated network, be able to troubleshoot and apply to production whatever fixes your current issues. With the same approach of this patented technology of ours to mount backups, we're immediately being able to give you access to the content of the backup, so file level access. And this is not just a list, it can actually run the content of the backups. So be that any kind of document or PDF or video, whatever you need to make sure that this is the proper content that needs to be restored, can be first accessed and then pushed back to production environment very simply, or exported to somewhere else. Talking about application, like more granular activities, we do support a few of the applications that actually come standard with Microsoft VSS technologies. So this means that we are simply able to mount the content to the specific level of application and give you granular restores such as Active Directory objects, Exchange items, calendar or inbox items, be able to restore SharePoint content or sites or subsites, work with SQL or Oracle databases to push back specific databases, a table or something else that you need, and even staging back to production environments. Now, this technology can be further leveraged to use secure restore. So if your backups may have been corrupted and infected already with the malware, once you run the latest restore points, but you still need them, we can actually make sure that they are being disinfected or being scanned for any kind of malicious activities before you put these VMs live back to production environment, again, without the need of extraction first. So we mount, we scan, we then, if everything is okay, we'll deliver, aka start the virtual machine in production. If not, you'll even have options such as disconnecting the virtual machine from network and troubleshoot yourself, or completely abort the restore procedure to make sure that nothing spreads through your environments. Talking about GDPR, been mentioned earlier in the sessions, right? So this is something that Europeans need to comply to for 100%, and even outside of Europe, it's a big, huge hassle nowadays. And we can offer the production environment scripts used to be removing these kind of data from the production servers to be removed as well before restoring back to production. So we can make sure very easily by just attaching the same script that you use in production that whatever data you do restore from any restore point, the same compliance applies to you just like as to your production environments. Replication is included as well, so you're ready to do VMware or Hyper-V replication straightforward to another site. This will be an active classic solution, but inbuilt in the product, it's with the same licenses. So as soon as you're ready to back up, you're ready to replicate as well. And as mentioned, very simple to deploy and configure. Taking one step forward, we can even create failover plans. So in case of, let's say, something happened to your production environment, be that entire production or partial ones, you are being able to have some plans in preparation in advance made. And once any kind of disaster strikes, just simply run the plan and fail over to your production environments when required. Right, moving on a bit, if you have any kind of shares, last backup is the new solution delivered by Veeam, and this will again not be just a standard NDMP solution out there on the market. It has its proprietary solutions that actually do the same advanced technologies that Veeam uses to back up virtualization or physical machines, to have our own logic on how to fasten up the processes, how to be more flexible with the restores and so on. As mentioned, for the physical machines, we do have agents for them. So, by the way, VMware or Hyper-V backup or application is 100% agent-free. So when it comes to physical servers, of course, you'll need something to be installed there, which will be the Veeam agents that can be actually centrally deployed and managed by the Veeam software itself. Another solution is the Veeam One, which can automatically directly monitor all virtual environments. So we can just add the production environment again from virtualization perspective, be that individual hosts, clusters, or central management, such as System Center from Microsoft, and straightforward out of the box have 250 predefined alerts, be able to receive monitoring alerts and built-in knowledge base for them. Run specific reports on the gathered data, such as infrastructure assessments for the production environment, or even capacity planning for the future. So yeah, sorry about the quick steps going through the slides. I just wanted to make a short introduction about Veeam. Now we'll slow down the step a bit and talk about what we do have integration for the cloud and why we are special, why we are bringing actually more to the use of the cloud and adoption of it, or migration, restores, or actually use them as a safety net, depending on whose users what. So starting with the first option, to be able to migrate workloads or restore them to Microsoft Azure. This is very interesting because, as mentioned earlier, very simple to backup, right? You can just add Hyper-V, you do your backup of the virtual machines. You can automatically deploy agents and protect physical workloads, such as Windows or Linux boxes. And from these backups that we do in Veeam Backup or Application, you can have your account in Azure mapped, and you can just right-click on those backups and say, I want to restore these workloads to Azure platform, right? So this will allow us to actually do conversion towards the cloud platform to have through a specific Veeam gateway deliver those resources into Azure platform and power on your resources just as you had them on-prem immediately into the Azure after restoring. So this means that whatever resource failure you have in production environment, be that individual VM, be that some storage, or be that a physical box that you no longer can provide resources for on-prem, but you do have the Azure subscription, you will be immediately able to just right-click on your backups, and instead of restoring on-prem, you choose to restore to the cloud, and it will happen in the background, fully automated by Veeam. Another option is actually to extend your backups to the cloud. So our approach would be to do first local backup. This will be very fast. It will be very easy to restore using the instant recovery technologies, but these requires, of course, good storage performance. So we require a disk-to-disk to something else approach. That something else can be a tape, can be the cloud, specifically, let's say Azure Blob. And this can be actually tiered out as a capacity tier into the cloud. You have two ways to do this. And you also can leverage new technologies such as immutability of the buckets to make sure that the backups are not getting corrupted by, let's say, ransomware, and use quick and easy 3-2-1 strategies in one single backup job. Now, if you look at the structure a bit, just to get a bit deep dive on this, we will create a performance tier on-prem. This can be any kind of backup repository on premises where you do your initial backups. And this will be extended towards the capacity tier. So you would be able to leverage things like doing immediate copy of the backups, whatever you create on-prem, to be created also in the cloud, to create GFS strategies such as weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly backups and sync them automatically to the cloud, or actually move older tiered backup repositories towards the blob storage to assure that the impact that you have on the local repositories is absolutely minimal. Yeah, so footprint is minimized. This will not be, of course, just a simple copy. We spent a lot of time and effort into integrating with the Azure Blob, and actually do a specific type of integration, which allows us to do faster backups towards the cloud and also minimize the impact from restoring from the cloud. Being a software solution that focuses on actually working at a block level with your data, we can actually use data chunks from the cloud and combine them with the same available blocks on-prem. So when you need to restore something, whatever you have, even from different restore points or from different backups, we can leverage from there instead of going to the cloud and read that data back, this way lowering your cost of egress and assuring faster and easier restore point for you. And the whole logic is built in, so you don't need to actually understand or control or mitigate this. So everything works out of the box. You just do the backups to the cloud, and when you want to restore, this logic will automatically apply. We also leverage this capability of the cloud being infinite, right? We do see issues nowadays a bit with the actual limitations, right? Because everybody started to use the cloud, but really cloud is indeed an infinite resource, because whatever is in the way, let's say right now, it does expand, it does adapt very quickly, and large companies such as Microsoft are being able to provide the infinity experience to all customers sooner rather than later, even in these kind of overused situations of the cloud, right? So what we'll do again is just duplicate the metadata and the local blocks, and these chunks of data can be reused from the cloud or from the on-prem whenever need be. All right, moving on a bit. Another option is if you are running Azure, but you have your VMware licenses and you port them to the Cloud Simple platform and you're running there as VMware virtual infrastructure, we will be still able to provide you the required backup solution. Veeam being a VMware Hyper-V support, we do have even the Cloud Simple solution covered from the box. This will be available directly straightforward even from the Azure Marketplace. You can just install Veeam Backup or application, which will be fully adapted to the Cloud Simple scenario. And you'll be able to protect and experience the same backup strategies that you would have with an on-prem VMware infrastructure. Right. Another thing is actually protecting Office 365. And the biggest and foremost question that we get all the time is how do we do this, or why would we do this? Because yeah, you go to the cloud and your data is safe. As we mentioned earlier in the previous sessions, actually your data is your responsibility, right? It's your content that matters to, first of all, you, and you do have the responsibility to somehow protect it, because companies, not just Microsoft, but all cloud companies, they actually deliver you the hardware specs, right? So you move your hardware into the cloud, but the data that you put there is still yours as ownership and responsibility. So one of the biggest issues that customers don't realize by moving towards the Office 365 platform are the retention policies. And usually, especially when you're looking to getting out a better price, I just need to run everything there. I just need to make the minimum impact to my budgetary requirements to move towards the cloud, right? Sometimes this happens that we discussed earlier again, that we just adopt the cloud without actually understanding the cloud first. And this is the biggest problem that creates the gaps, especially in Office 365. And even though you would have maybe a full legal hold on your data in the cloud that can be activated for a higher price, still there's some gaps that need to be filled in and some redundancy to be created to your own data, because nowadays if you don't have at least so-called 3 copies of your data in 2 different types of media, one of them off-site, basically anything can happen to your data, and you never know when something will hit it or corrupt it, or actually accidentally or purposely delete it. So yeah, as mentioned, there's the responsibility models outside from the cloud vendors, including Microsoft and specifically Office 365. So these slides are actually presenting the parts of the responsibilities to Microsoft and what are yours. If you take a closer look at it, basically everything that's on the top of the Microsoft responsibility part, right, are related to infrastructure and security and regulations. But what's on the bottom is actually at the data level, including ownership of the data, access to it, security of it, and even to somehow create copies or back up your data in any kind of way. And what you can get with Veeam, of course, is full protection. So we'll have the option to basically keep any kind of restore point that you want, any kind of retention policies, reach out to Microsoft Office 365 and basically extract the data from the cloud platform, store it in directly back to Azure or to your on-prem or wherever you want to. As retention policies, we can actually deliver even 2 types of ones. So item level retention, depending on how old the data is, or look into snapshot-based retention, just as you would do with the on-prem Exchange, let's say, or some other mailing system. When I create a backup, I want to keep it for X amount of time. We can also deliver encryption on top. So if you use, for example, Azure Blob as a target, we can use encryption on top of it, and you'll be able to protect your data even further. So make sure that actually whatever you copy outside of Office, you will not have to worry about it from the security perspective, right? Restoration comes back to what I shortly mentioned earlier. We have these explorers that actually can look into the data directly at the specific level. So if you want to restore Exchange items, we'll have an explorer for it. If you want to restore SharePoint, we'll have an explorer for it. And if you use OneDrive and you back it up, we'll have a specific restorer for it. Right? We call these explorers because they will actually mount the data in the background and give you the native view of the specific database and organization structure. So you can leverage your data exactly as you would have done with your on-prem copy of the infrastructure. Now, again, even the product of Office 365, maybe the slides look scarce, but again, here we have just one actual component of the backup, which is the server, right? So you can just install the Veeam backup for Office 365 anywhere. The rest of the components being just done specifically segmented, so you can easily scale it out. You can add more repository, you can add more compute, and you can segment the backup infrastructure to as small or as big as you actually require it. And after the short installation and backing up the Office 365 data, you will have, unique to the industry, 25 different ways of how to restore this data to the cloud back or to on-prem resources or export data and so on. And even licensing is quite simple. So for Office 365, for example, it's just per user, right? You have one Office 365 subscriber. That will be one license that you need to buy for the product to cover Exchange, private SharePoint, or OneDrive for Business for that account. And of course, shared resources would be automatically covered by the same licenses as soon as you cover all accounts that actually have access to those shares. A new solution that's coming up now exactly in about 2 weeks, so it will be this month. It's a Veeam backup for Microsoft Azure. As of now, we've been able to actually do backups with agents inside of virtual machines in Azure, but this was not a native approach, right? So it was not cloud specific. And our scope is always to be specific to the resource of the content that we're backing up. So what we've done here is actually built a specific backup solution for being able to work with the Azure accesses, with the Azure snapshots, and actually will deliver a complete solution that will protect infrastructure as a service, right? And if we'll just look a bit at the technical parts as well, the Veeam backup for cloud, as we called, will be available in the marketplace to just deploy. It will be able to create actual snapshots of the cloud virtual machines, store them long-term in somewhere else, and keep them into a Veeam proprietary format. So in case of you need to restore them, we'll be able to use our already existing technology, such as Veeam direct restore to Azure or instant recovery to on-prem. All of these things would be available because the backup formatting would be exactly the same. So no matter of what situation you're facing, be that a hybrid scenario, all in cloud, all in on-prem, looking to migrate towards the cloud, whatever your requirements are, we will actually have a solution of how to natively protect it, how to properly back it up, how to test it, and how to restore it back to its original location, cross-restore, or so on. We also have a community edition for the Veeam backup application. So the one that I mentioned earlier at the beginning, to be able to actually look into it and test up to 10 instances, so 10 virtual machines or 10 physical machines or mixed. And you'll be able to actually do straightforward just the backups and the replication and the instant restores out of the box with just applying the community edition license, which will work for you even for free to the certain amounts mentioned. All right, so yeah, I'm trying to keep it in schedule, so I'll stop here. I'll thank you for your attendance, and we'll switch to the Q&A panel to see if there's any kind of questions that might need answers. And again, thank you for according me the time to present you some things about Veeam. It was a bit short and a lot of information, but slides will be shared afterwards, so it's a good catch up to look into with the specific details if you want it. And of course, just feel free to reach out for more details upcoming.
Okay, so once again, I am Diana Tataran from Avaelgo. I'm the marketing manager, and you might know me as the one with all those cloud conference emails. I am going to conclude this mini edition of Cloud Conference with the announcement of the next one. We're going to see each other live again on May 13th. We will have another series of 3 sessions. This time the sessions will be from Aleph, Palo Alto Networks, and Computaris. The agenda will be announced next week. And until then, be safe, and thank you once again for joining us for this first virtual edition of Cloud Conference. Thank you all. Bye.